The Gift of Gab Show, your go-to lifestyle podcast, covering everything from psychology and relationships to politics and current events. Live from Chicago. It's the Gift of Gab Show. Gift of Gab Show. Here's your host, Gabby Smith.
Hello, everyone. We are back in the studio, continuing our discussion on dating. As you guys know, we're going to do a mini series, and we really want to understand the male perspective. On the last podcast, we talked to Marshall, a 38-year-old single African-American male. It was really enlightening. I mean, I really felt like he talked a lot about his own personal life, as well as gave women a lot of good tips about dating from his point of view. Well, today, me and Dana, the show's dating advisor. Hi, Dana.
Hey, Gabby.
We are going to continue that discussion with another male in the studio. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Hello, Gabby. Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here. Now, Greg, you're single, right?
Yes.
That's why you're here. White, male,
Yes.
Jewish.
Yes.
Right? You've got all of those. Check, check, check. All right, but tell us.
Although we can talk about religion, I think that I was certainly raised Jewish, although I think these days I tend more atheist, but we can get into that.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to save that for another show.
Fair enough.
Is that good? All
Sure.
right. Well, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, let's see. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I guess you could call it the North Shore, kind of a loaded term. I went to college and law school out in the D.C. area. I went to Georgetown for undergrad. I went to George Mason Law School, and then made my way back to Chicago circuitously through Los Angeles, and I've been living here since 2006, so about 10 years. I'm a partner in a law firm.
Okay. How old are you?
I'm 36.
All right. So you are a partner in a law firm. Very impressive and very similar to Marshall. You have a very exciting, very strong background. So why do you think you're still single?
Well, I think that's a tricky question. I've thought about it some, and honestly, I think if I knew the answer to that question, I might not be single, but I can certainly identify some factors. The first one, I think you've probably talked about this on your show, but one of them is definitely sort of timing or geography. And what I mean by that would be, timing is sort of right woman, wrong time, or wrong woman, right time. I think I've been in the wrong woman, right time, sort of loop for a while now. And what I mean by geography is I've gotten involved, I guess, over time with a number of people who don't live in Chicago, and that sort of adds a whole nother level of complications to things. Whether it's you catch up at a wedding or someone from school who you connect with or reconnect with on social media, something like that. But that's definitely a big part of it. I think another factor is definitely trying to find the fine line that's somewhere between settling and managing expectations. In other words, you should definitely, or at least I think, look for someone who sort of checks all your boxes. On the other hand, you're never going to find someone who's perfect. So trying to find that line between managed expectations that are reasonable versus settling for somebody, I think, is somewhat tricky.
So, Greg, what are some of the characteristics of a wrong woman?
A wrong woman. Well, unfortunately, I've dated a lot of those, so this could be a long list.
They are out there in these streets.
There are some wrong women out there. But what is your list? I mean, if you had to say the top 5 things that are wrong with women that you're finding.
Let me preface that by saying I absolutely love women, and I'm always looking for things that I like about women. But if I could throw out some general categories or things that sort of throw things off in the wrong direction, the first thing would be sort of women who are in it for the wrong reason. In other words, I think women, or at least some of the women I've dated, have had certain expectations that were a little bit out of whack in terms of what goes into a relationship.
Well, such as?
Well, so I think it comes into a number of different sort of flavors, but part of it, I dated a woman for a long time. We lived together. There was a point in my life where I thought we might get married, but over time it became clear that she really wasn't sort of putting in the type of work to the type of committed relationship, and sort of there was an imbalance. And what I mean by the work is, everything from big things to helping out around the house, helping with the dog, helping out financially, just anything.
She wasn't a teammate.
Exactly. And
wasn't a partner.
And I think that that's sort of important. It's not necessary, for instance, that both people in the relationship make the same amount of money. It's not necessary that you have sort of all the same resources at your disposal, but at the same time, you have to work with what you do have. So, I'm looking for someone who is willing to unload the dishwasher every once in a while. It's not a huge list of expectations I have, but definitely there's an imbalance when it creeps in and you start to notice it. And, if you let it get out of control, I think it can really tank a relationship. So I think that having expectations that aren't realistic, and then also not being willing to put in the type of work, because ultimately I think that work leads to hopefully something close to, an unconditional loving relationship. And you really only get out what you put in. So, I think that's been a big challenge.
Well, you talked a little bit about timing earlier. There's a saying out there that relationships are 50% about timing, 50% about the person. Do you find that to be the case in your situation, in your experiences?
I think it's a good question. I think, I'd be hard pressed to say it's, exactly 50% this or that, or, but I do think timing's a big part, because I've definitely been in situations with, I'll give you an example. Right after I graduated law school, I spent a year in Los Angeles working out at a talent agency, and it was kind of a fun job. You sort of end up running into all types of celebrity people and working for some pretty, big name Hollywood people. And it, decided after about a year that it wasn't the career for me. But right when I decided to leave Los Angeles, I met just a tremendously awesome woman. Her name was Dana.
Yes.
All right. There's two fabulous Danas in the world.
She was studying to be a psychologist, and she had just moved to Los Angeles to do her clinical work. And I think she had some requirement. It was 2,000, 3,000 hours, something like that. So when you think about the amount of time it takes to do all that work, she was going to be in LA for the foreseeable future, and I was leaving. But man, if Dana wasn't just that, maybe the one that got away, you never know. And that's not the only time. I dated a woman in Chicago for a long time, for months, and she had an opportunity to change jobs and move to New York City. And, I think it was a situation where we weren't quite there yet, where we could have committed forever. But maybe if we dated another month or 2 or 6, we would have ended up getting engaged at some point. But she moved away. So, that's timing is just a tricky thing. And I, like I said before, I think it falls into those two categories of right woman, wrong time, or, wrong woman, right time. And lately it's been a lot of wrong woman, right time.
Oh, gosh. Well, okay, so tell me about this then. Are you open to dating outside your race, outside of your religion?
Absolutely. It's funny. Growing up, or, we talked about this at the top of the show, but being raised in a Jewish family, I was always sort of encouraged to date Jewish women, and that was a big thing for my mother. And it was always a point of tension with me because it's never been a priority for me at all. And part of that is just math. I mean, if there's less than 2% of the global population that's Jewish, that leaves over 98% that isn't. So,
right.
I'm not a gambling man, but if I were, I'd put my money on the 98 plus percent.
98%.
So, disabusing my mother of that fiction was sort of took years. But to answer your question, it's definitely yes. I mean, I am open to, dating anybody, any color, any race, any ethnicity, any background.
312.
It's all about fit.
555.
Well, we've got another Dana here in studio. So
Hello.
Hey,
you
Greg.
never know, right? You never know. Okay, so let me ask you this, because on Facebook, a lot of people wrote to me saying that they're single because they really just enjoy the freedom of being single, right? They feel like marriage is, you got the handcuffs and you can't do what you used to do as a single man. And a New York Post article that I read said that there actually are just a lot of good women out there. So a lot of times men don't want to settle down. They just want to play the field and just be out there, doing what they do. So do you secretly want to stay single and not necessarily be in a relationship long term?
Honest answer is no. I think, if we were sitting here having this conversation 10 years ago, the answer would have been, sort of secretly yes. Because I don't think I was ready at that point. I don't think I was far enough in my career where I felt established enough to sort of provide the kind of lifestyle, or at least be in a position to provide the kind of lifestyle that I want. But at this age, I'm at a point where I'm setting goals that really can't be accomplished by me alone. I'd love to be in a committed marriage. I would love to have a child, or several children, as it were. So those are simply goals that I couldn't possibly, accomplish on my own. So the answer to your question, no, I don't relish my singlehood. On the other hand, I do have priorities. In other words, I only have so much free time. So if it's between doing something I want to do and spending time with a girl that I don't think there's a future with, I tend to end things pretty quickly once I realize it's not going anywhere.
Well, especially, right, if you know that she's not the one for you. So now I know that your younger brother recently had a baby.
He did.
Right. So does that put more pressure on you because you are older to have a baby and have a family like your younger brother?
It's interesting. I think the pressure is more I put on myself, because I would like, I grew up in a family where my mother was an only child, or is an only child, and my father had one sister, but she never had kids. So that means I never had first cousins. And to the extent I could give that kind of experience to my own kids and to my brother's kids to have first cousins, I put pressure on myself that I'd love to have kids that are close in age to his, but I'm not going to, do anything dramatic or have children with the wrong women just because I want to have a child close in age to my brother's kids.
Well, so does that mean, are you more excited about having a baby or having a wife?
Well, I think it's
or
it's
both.
Sort of a timeline, right? I mean, you can't have B without A. I mean, I guess you could. There's all kinds of arrangements, but, at least in my own traditional sense of things, can't have baby without wife.
Well, right. All right. Well, because you are so successful, do you believe that women are just too eager to marry you based upon your resume alone? I mean, you're a partner in a law firm. You live a great life. You're doing well. You come from a wonderful family. So are you meeting those women that are just ready to, get married?
Hey, Greg. How you doing?
And have your baby.
I can't answer that question without thank you for the compliments, but I can tell you that I think I've been in both positions. I think in every relationship, at least in the beginning, the person that sort of wields the most power is the person that's least interested in the other person. And so I've been in the position of being less interested, and I've also been in the position of being more interested. And to your question about eagerness, I think that there have been certain women I've dated that have been eager and sort of have the, you may call it the biological clock ticking or the marriage clock ticking or something like that, but at the end of the day, I've been on the losing side of that battle just as many times as I've been on the winning side.
I think that's a very interesting point that you raised about the person who's least interested wielding the most power. I think that's so true in so many different relationships, and not just necessarily yours, but I think that resonates with a lot of our listeners. So.
But that's a big signal, I think, that's
absolutely
not that hard to pick up on when somebody isn't engaging in the relationship in the way. And part of it is just, technological. I'm at an age, and this is something I think unique to just being 36, where I'm right on the tail end, I guess, of Generation Y and right before the millennial generation. And so I can't dip too low and, date girls that are even, 25 would be 10 years or 11 years younger than me. That's probably way too young. Later 20s, it's still difficult, because the frames of reference are so different just based on, technology and texting and social media and all that. I'm certainly computer savvy, but I'm not the kind of person who's, texting what I had for breakfast to everybody.
And posting it.
Exactly.
Facebook, right?
And I don't have a problem with that. It's just not something that sort of jives with my personality. So that sort of rules out, I don't want to say it's a deal breaker or someone I wouldn't date, but definitely if somebody's more focused on sort of projecting themselves to the world, that's not going to be someone I'm as interested in as someone who's wants to project to me, you know what I mean?
So what is your age range? I mean, what's the youngest and oldest woman that you date?
I think the youngest I've dated would have been like 5 years younger than me.
Okay.
And I think that just by dint of what I was saying a moment ago about being sort of on that generational sort of borderline, created certain issues. I can remember distinctly one night where, I mentioned earlier there was a woman I lived with for a while. And I remember one night she's sitting on the couch and I'm sitting on the chair next to the couch, and she's reading to me off of someone else's Facebook page. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh my goodness, when is this going to be over?
She's not the one. She's not the one for you. All right. So Greg, where do you meet women? Have you ever done online dating? Do you meet them at the bar, go to a club? You meet them through friends?
It's funny. I think I go through different phases. I was very hesitant and reluctant to try online dating for a long time because I thought it sort of had like an icky factor or like a fake factor. In other words, if I'm looking for the perfect pair of shoes, I can go online and search at all the different stores and find the best price until I find my size and the style I want just right. And there was something a little hackneyed I felt about trying to look for a woman in sort of a similar fashion. Oh, this one's too such and such, this one's too, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But having said that, it's how a lot of people meet people. So indeed, I've definitely gone on some of the dating websites. I've done a couple of the apps, but frankly, those are a little bit silly. You've heard the names before, Tinder and Bumble and all those. But that's never really sort of worked out. The expectation there is sort of that you meet someone you're going to be reasonably attracted to because you get the pictures up front, but oftentimes that's necessary but not sufficient to actually sustain some kind of a relationship.
Long term.
Right. And, so the other ways are, through friends, through family members, things like that. Always willing to go out on a blind date if somebody thinks they've got someone who's a good potential match for me. The issue there is that sometimes the matchmaker isn't as thoughtful as you'd like them to be. Sometimes a matchmaker will set you up with someone solely because you're single and they're single. And again, necessary but not sufficient to sustain a relationship. So I tend to gravitate more towards matchmakers who know me and have known me for a long enough time that they might have enough insight to actually find a good match, as opposed to someone who is perfectly well-intentioned but just doesn't know me well enough to know what's going to, sort of make me tick.
Exactly. And just because you're single and a girl's single does not mean you guys belong together.
Right. And there's a lot of it is, a lot of the ways you meet women nowadays, at least with the online stuff, is very focused on sort of, looks and appearance based on photos that you sort of self-curate. And so, of course, you're always going to put your best foot forward online. But the reality is that those are pictures taken at weddings, and they're taken when you're all dolled up. And same goes for the guys on there and the girls.
It's not the real deal.
Right. So when you actually meet the person, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who actually fulfills all of your expectations based on what's in their profile. So I think that that's one of the reasons why I sort of don't like online as much as I like meeting through someone who I know. But to be honest with you, I'm old-fashioned, and I've always pictured sort of running into someone in line waiting for a sandwich or something.
I love it.
And striking up a conversation. And, I've had some experiences in life that sort of developed from there. The girl, I guess I've mentioned her a couple times, but the girl who I probably came closest to marrying was someone who I met because she was behind the reception desk at my physical therapy clinic one day, and she was cute, and we had chemistry, and lo and behold, I worked up the courage to ask her out, and it worked out. So, I think a lot of it is just willing to be a little bit daring and, just understand that it can happen anytime, any place, especially when you're not looking.
You're absolutely right. And we talked about that on the show before. Courage
is rewarded.
Yeah. That's great.
It's absolutely true.
All right. Well, Greg, as we close out the show here, can you share some personal dating turn-offs for our listeners? Because there are a lot of women out there that want to hear, what are some things that they should stop doing to hopefully get a guy like you?
Sure. Well, far be it for me to give advice on dating something I'm obviously not expert at, but I do have experience with it at least. I would say this. First, to me, I'm old-fashioned. So I think romance is out there. I think that it's okay to have expectations that involve, being swept off your feet. I don't think that setting the bar high is something that people should shy away from. I think that, managing expectations is important, but keep them high. Second, just little things make all the difference. Little things like if I, am kind enough to pick up a check, it's equally kind of you to send me a quick text message the next day just to say thank you. And it's not about the money transaction. It's more just about the thoughtfulness. Exactly. And sort of, showing that you're on that level where you recognize that there's, a certain level of sacrifice that goes into it and the work, and I guess in general, just, try and stay upbeat. Everybody comes to the table with their own, sort of baggage and backstory.
We've talked about baggage,
yes,
right, Dana?
Indeed, absolutely.
But in a way that should be something that brings us together, because since we all have our baggage, we all have that in common. So to sit there and worry, am I coming across oddly or strange or something like that is, you're much better off sort of recognizing the commonalities. And the other thing, or maybe the last thing I would answer, is just that it's okay to take a second look. You're processing so much information when you meet someone for the first time, and that's just a function of the way we meet people these days, whether it's through setups or blind dates or friends of friends or online dating or whatever it is. You're processing so much information at once in that first meeting, whether it's over drinks or lunch or dinner. You've got food coming your way. You've got a server that's bugging you and interrupting you, and then at the same time you're trying to evaluate this person that's sitting 3 feet from you to figure out if that's the future mother of your children.
Right.
You know what I mean? And vice versa. She's trying to figure out if you're the father of hers.
It's a lot of pressure.
So it's a lot of pressure, and so sometimes it's okay to not know after the first date, and it's okay to go out with someone twice, even if you're worried that he keeps picking up the check and I'm starting to feel bad. No, this is what dating is. This is the job.
That's
so
right.
You just got to keep showing up, and that's sort of been my philosophy. And obviously haven't found the woman of my dreams yet, but I'm not going to find her by not looking.
Well, I love that, Greg. Thank you so much. I mean, you gave such compelling information today about dating, your experiences, and it was truly a pleasure having you.
Thank you. I really am glad to have been here, and thank you so much. I could go on and on, certainly, but I won't.
I think she's out there for you, Greg. I think she's listening right now.
Oh,
yes.
Thank you, Dana.
And Dana, as always, thanks for being back with us. And on our next podcast, we will talk to a marriage counselor, a true expert on all types of relationships. So stay tuned for more fun Gift of Gab shows coming soon. You don't want to miss out.
The Gift of Gab show, hosted by Gabby Smith, is sponsored by Bar Louie, located at 1325 South Halsted Street in Chicago. Go there for the handcrafted martinis, 30 beers on tap, and delicious food. Open 7 days a week, 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. As Bar Louie always says, eat, drink, and be happy. Make sure to check out Gabby Smith at giftofgabshow.com and follow Gabby on Facebook, Gabby Smith, on Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at Gabby Smith Show. Then stop in and check out her YouTube channel, Gabby Smith.